Today we're going to discuss the pandemic of immune supporting nutrient deficiency. And I believe this is the real pandemic going on, because if we had sufficient immune response, then no matter what we face, we're going to have less susceptibility of severe outcomes, regardless if that's a viral infection, a bacterial infection, exposure to toxins, whatever it is. The more robust our immune system, the better we are set up to deal with whatever life and the environment throw at us. And we're going to look at new research today that shows and proves for us that the standard American diet, and then I add, and the standard American lifestyle predispose us to acute and chronic disease. So the study we're going to look at was in the journal Nutrients, and it's a really interesting study because it's based on CDC data. So I'm going to switch over to the actual paper here so we can dive in deep. And the paper is titled Inadequacy of Immune Health Nutrients Intakes in U.S. Adults. And what's really cool about this information is this was published, by the way, in June 2020. So, you know, this came out months into the pandemic, and you know, during times when you would hear through mainstream media outlets that nutrients weren't useful and don't use these. You know, we knew that was the wrong advice, but even CDC data said that, and the CDC is the ones telling us don't use those things. But look, this paper is based on the NHANES study, and the NHANES study you can see down here is a study they do biannually, or every 2 years. It's called the National Health and Nutrition Exam Survey. It's every 2 year cross-sectional study of the US population conducted by who? The CDC. Okay, so the CDC has this information. They're collecting it every 2 years. And so by using this data, these authors investigated what is the health, or what is the level of immune health nutrients in the US population. And this is based on a representative group of the US population of 26,000 people over 19 years old. Okay, so across the 26,000 people in the study, they're looking at what are the levels of vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, and zinc. So this study is looking at those levels to try and correlate, you know, what do those levels look like, and is this a public health emergency or not? So before we get into it, let's just look at what these nutrients look like on a global scale. So for vitamin A, the World Health Organization has classified the deficiency of vitamin A as a public health issue, especially in children and pregnant women in over 50% of all countries. So the WHO says the deficiency in vitamin A is a problem worldwide. Moving on, vitamin C inadequacy is common in many countries. Almost 1 billion people around the world have low vitamin D levels, regardless of ethnicity or age. Only 1/5 of the globe have optimal vitamin E levels. In developing countries, zinc deficiency is a health concern. So we've got papers and papers and papers and piles of science showing that A, micronutrients and vitamins are key for immune health and optimal immune function and immune defense, and B, that a large proportion of the planet are deficient in one or more of these vitamins. So if we're looking to prevent pandemics, we need to have optimal immune defense against whatever might cause a pandemic. Now, if we dial it into the US, we can see that in the United States, 45% of the US population is inadequate for vitamin A, 46% is inadequate for vitamin C, 95% of the population is inadequate for vitamin D, and 84% for vitamin E, 15% for zinc. So this is huge. And we're going to look at this. And so again, we might say, well, let's supplement these things. And then you'd hear people in the media and even conventional doctors all the time will tell you, well, nutrition doesn't matter. Supplements don't work. Don't do that. Well, again, we've got this data from the CDC, And let's look at a table that shows us it actually does matter. Okay, so if you look at this table here, you've got along the x-axis vitamin D, vitamin E, C, A, and zinc. And the y-axis, you have a black bar and a gray bar. The black bar is how many people are below the estimated adequate range, the EAR, when they consume food only, okay? And then the gray area is if they take food and supplements, how many are inadequate. Okay, so for vitamin D, you can see people who try and get their D from food only, 95% of those people are deficient in D. People who get their vitamin D from food and supplements, that number drops to 65% are inadequate. So obviously the 30% better that group is than the food only is from the supplements. So clearly supplements work. Same picture for vitamin E. Vitamin E, people who only get their vitamin E from food are 84% deficient. If you're taking food and supplements, that number drops to 60%. So supplements obviously make a difference. Now, what is determined adequate and inadequate also makes a difference from a health perspective. We've had talks before that we've all heard of the RDA, or the recommended daily allowance. Well, this study is focusing on the estimated adequate range. And the difference there is how they're measuring, enough. So if we look here, you can see that the estimated average requirement is a nutrient intake value that is estimated to meet the requirement of 50% of healthy individuals in a group. So the EAR is, are you getting enough daily to meet the requirement of 50% of healthy individuals in a group? Are you as healthy as half the group, basically? Or do you have levels that are the same as 50% of the group? The RDA, the recommended daily allowance, is set to provide the number of requirements of 97 to 98% of the individuals in the group. So the RDA is a higher standard. Either way, both are inadequate because RDAs are set, for example, for vitamin C, the RDA for vitamin C was set by studying people with flu and giving them vitamin C until they had a decrease in symptoms. Okay, so hopefully you see the problem there. The goal wasn't to say, when did they beat the virus and heal? What level of vitamin C does that? They just said, what level of vitamin C changes symptoms? So the recommended daily allowance for vitamin C is way too low if your goal is health, because we don't want a level that will help change a symptom. We want a level that will knock out the infection or prevent the infection in the first place. So just by the standards that the studies are using, all levels that are reported low are far lower than, are even lower if the goal is optimal health. Okay, so you can see here, this graphic right here absolutely shows that supplements make a difference. Okay, and it shows that our food is not going to get us there in and of itself. So even organic food now is not as healthy as organic food 40 years ago. So if you're all organic, non-GMO, you're still not going to be sufficient and optimal in the vitamins and minerals you need for immune health or health in general. So we all need to be supplementing. Let's dive into the information in terms of how vitamins A, C, D, E, and zinc support your immune function. How do they make us less susceptible to infection, to autoimmune disease, to chronic inflammation, etc. Well, starting with vitamin D, for more than a century, both sunlight and dietary sources of vitamin D have been used to treat tuberculosis, a bacterial infection of the lungs. So again, for over 100 years, humanity has known and used vitamin D for lung infections. So why all of a sudden would it not have been screamed from the rooftops? Okay, how does vitamin D help us, help our immune system? Well, I tell patients all the time, vitamin D is a Swiss Army knife. Okay, it does all kinds of things. First, it enhances barrier function of epithelial cells in the eyes and the intestines. So it prevents, you could say, leaky eye and leaky gut. Okay, It enhances chemotactic, phagocytic, and bactericidal activities of immune cells. Chemotaxis is the immune cell's ability to travel from one place to another. Phagocytosis is the immune cell's ability to eat an infected cell or eat an infectious microbe. And bactericidal activity is, you hear cidal, that's death, right? So bactericidal is they can kill bacteria. So D is antibacterial, or it enhances the antibacterial capabilities of your immune cells. D is also antibacterial and antimicrobial by promoting production of cathelicidin and defensin, which are proteins that require vitamin D to be made, and they kill pathogens. They're antimicrobial. Vitamin D helps facilitate the differentiation of T cells into naive T cells, so baby immature T cells, into killer T cells. So cells that can go kill infection, find it and kill it. And if you have too low levels of D, then you have an imbalance between mature killing T cells and naive immature baby T cells, biased towards the babies. So we need vitamin D for our babies to mature into effective lean, mean killing T cell machines. All right. Vitamin D is anti-inflammatory. We've talked in past videos about C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, pro-inflammatory cytokines. Well, D promotes anti-inflammatory cytokines. It is anti-inflammatory, and it does this by promoting regulatory T cells, which are the cells in our immune system that quiet inflammation. They say, shh, calm down. Let's put out the fire. Let's resolve the inflammation. Don't shoot at that. That's yourself. If you shoot at self, that's autoimmunity. So vitamin D helps prevent that. So D, very key in immune function, antiviral, antibacterial, prevents leaky barriers, just a powerhouse. Moving on. Vitamin E is next. Vitamin E functions mostly in an antioxidant capacity. It's 30 times higher in white blood cells than in red blood cells. And the reason for that is because white blood cells will use oxidative stress, or rust is a metaphor I've used with a lot of you, to kill an infection or to clean up a wound. So if you have a wound or you have a bacteria or viral infection that's damaging tissue, the white blood cells are going to go and use oxidative stress or use rust to kill the bacteria, kill the virus, or kill the viral infected cell, or clean up the wound. So oxidative stress is good to help kill, but we also don't want collateral damage to our healthy cells. So vitamin E functions as an antioxidant to help deal with that, to prevent collateral damage as much as possible. And it does that, again, from its antioxidant capacity. It does that for your epithelial cells, so like the gut barrier, the eye, the lungs, the blood-brain barrier. But it does have direct impact on immune function as well by improving natural killer cells. Natural killer cells, if you can tell by the name, are excellent killers of infection. So vitamin E helps them function, and it helps enhance lymphocyte proliferation. So vitamin E, big time antioxidant. That's its main role. Next is vitamin A. Here we go in blue, early 20th century. So from the early days, we've known that vitamin A is associated with resistance of infection to the extent that it is referred to as the anti-infective vitamin. Okay, we said earlier, the WHO says that vitamin A deficiency is a worldwide problem, a public health emergency worldwide, especially in underdeveloped countries. They recommend vitamin A as the main treatment for measles in third world countries. So vitamin A is big time antiviral. How? What does it do? Well, it promotes healthy barriers in your body. So anywhere we have epithelial mucus, type cells, the skin, the lungs, the gut, the bladder, the sinuses, vitamin A is key in maintaining those barriers, the barrier defense there. Vitamin A is essential for regulate natural killer cells and macrophages, which again, go and kill. Retinoic acid plays a role in dendritic cell function. Dendritic cells are the cells that notice invaders. So they'll see a bacteria or a virus or wounded tissue, and they'll grab it and they'll take it to the lymph node and they'll show it to T cells and say, hey, look what I found. This is abnormal. Go take care of it. So retinoic acid, which is the active form of vitamin A, that helps that identification and communication happen optimally. So vitamin A is huge. Barrier function, antiviral, anti-inflammatory. Vitamin C. Vitamin C supports healthy barriers through production of collagen. Okay, collagen, you all might take collagen protein, or you've heard of collagen protein. Vitamin C helps produce collagen. It's part of an optimal collagen matrix. Vitamin C stimulates production and function of your white blood cells. It enhances their travel, or the chemotaxis, and it clears up leftover debris. It has antioxidant effects. So again, when that oxidative stress is happening, vitamin C is the antioxidant to come and put out that rust. It's your anti-rust. It does that directly, and it does it by helping regenerate glutathione and vitamin E. So we talked earlier about vitamin E's main role largely is to be an antioxidant. Well, if an antioxidant works by quenching rust, say you have one rust molecule and one antioxidant, well, the antioxidant is going to give up, basically give up an electron to neutralize the free radical, and itself becomes oxidized. So then it has to be recycled into an antioxidant again. Vitamin C helps recycle glutathione and recycle vitamin E. So it's an efficient process. If you've got vitamin C, you can put out oxidative stress and recycle glutathione and E and keep putting out oxidative stress. Vitamin C also helps your antibodies and T cells function optimally. So again, being able to recognize foreigners and then go kill them. And then we have zinc. Normal development and function of the innate and adaptive immune system relies on zinc. Boom. That's enough right there. But moving on, zinc helps maintain mucosal integrity. So again, where do we have mucus? Gut, lungs, sinus, bladder, skin, eyes. Anything that's exposed to the outside world, mucosal integrity is key. And if you're paying attention, you've noticed every single one of these vitamins affects the epithelial barrier. So having good barrier defense, nice strong armor on, protects your insides. If we can stop the assault on the outside, say outside the castle walls, then we're much less likely to have poor outcomes, right? So nice strong armor protects us. Zinc helps do that too. Zinc enhances phagocytic activity, or killing activity, eating activity of natural killer cells and a bunch of our other immune cells. Zinc helps T cells coordinate and attack against pathogens. Zinc induces development of T regulatory cells, and those again are the ones that are anti-inflammatory and put out the fire once we've kicked butt and taken names. And then down here in blue, you can see zinc helps maintain balance and self-tolerance, which is critical in preventing autoimmunity. So if we're low in zinc, that increases risk that you have imbalance and that you lose tolerance to self. So now you're no longer saying, that's me, don't shoot at that. That's not me, shoot at that. Now you shoot at everything. Well, part of everything is the me, and if you shoot at me, then that's how you develop autoimmune disease. So zinc helps you prevent autoimmune disease, in addition to infection and everything else we talked about. So these nutrients, hopefully you learn more about the why behind these nutrients, how they help you, and why we want to be sufficient in them. And so the authors close with, a well-functioning immune system is essential to survival. Micronutrients are a fundamental part of the immune system and require optimal levels for effective immune function. Okay, so not RDA levels and not EAR levels, but require optimal levels for immune function. nutrient insufficiency or deficiency of one nutrient can adversely affect immune health, while multiple inadequacies at the same time in the same person may put the immune system at a bigger deficit, right? So if I'm only lacking vitamin D, I'm in trouble. But if I'm lacking vitamin D, vitamin A, and zinc, I'm in more trouble, is what that's saying. The prevalence of inadequate nutrient intakes that support the immune system remains substantial, and some are higher than previously reported. Given the long-term and widening of nutrient gaps in the United States, specifically in critical nutrients that support immune health, public health measures should adopt guidelines to ensure an adequate intake of these micronutrients, especially in vulnerable populations. Well, the entire population is vulnerable, if you can tell by the numbers. And what I loved was the public health measures should be adopted. You know, at the same time that our public health quote unquote experts were telling us that these things are useless, don't bother. So if you didn't know by now, that is an incorrect statement. And if you really want to quote follow the science, there's piles of it. And it has been for years and years that nutrition matters, micronutrients matter, vitamins matter, and supplements matter. So if you want to arm yourself to approach anything or deal with anything that's coming at you from an immune challenge standpoint, you want to have optimal levels of all vitamins and minerals. So let's open it up for questions, comments.
I have a question. I've always heard that in order for supplements to be absorbed into your system, you have to take them with food. Is that true?
In general, it is. It varies with certain supplements, but you know, for the ones we're talking about here, I would say yes, that's true, or that's optimal, because vitamins A, D, and E are fat soluble vitamins. So eating them with fat will help you absorb them better. So for example, you know, if you're taking them in the morning, eat some eggs, take your vitamins with it, and good to go. The C is water soluble, doesn't need to be taken with food necessarily. And if you're sick and taking it acutely, you're going to probably have a low appetite because you're sick and need more vitamin C more frequently than you'll want to eat. You know, so vitamin C doesn't necessarily need to be with food. Zinc, you could go either way too. It kind of depends on how you're wanting to use it. But in general, yes, with food, because if you're getting them in nature, previously you were getting it in a food source somehow, right? Other than vitamin D. Good question.
Like every time you do something like this, it makes me just want to just second guess everything about, like, you know I'm taking good stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm eating well, but then yet you're like, is it enough?
Yeah.
Is it enough?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's that question is scarier, I guess is not the right word, but the only word I can think of right now. If you're not testing levels, right? So we also, with you and all of us on this call, have labs behind us to have been able to see, okay, your D's low, we need to get that up. Your A's low, we need to get that up. Your E, your zinc, whatever. So, you know, you can more confidently say, yes, I'm doing okay, or we can update your testing and say, yeah, you're good. Whereas, you know, the rest of the population, they don't know.
You're just guessing. Yeah.
Right. They're guessing, they're eating low quality processed pro-inflammatory foods. You know, so they've got lots of whammies against them. They're not exercising, they're stressed, they're not sleeping well. They're listening to, you know, mainstream media about where health comes from. So they're way behind. Mm-hmm. Whereas, you know, all we have to do is say, hey, I want to run an updated test, you know.
Yeah. And it's just so important to know where you stand. It's so important.
Yeah. And again, that's why it's crazy that this is CDC data, right? This is there, and it's been there. Like they've been running this since 2005. They've been running these surveys, and that data has been there to be able to look at things like, well, on a population-wide basis, we should recommend XYZ nutrients. And that doesn't mean fortify your wheat with it, right? Because that's what they do. Let's fortify wheat with iron and B vitamins and whatever. It's like, no, let's get actual, okay, we have the data that people need this. Now, where's the data that tell us what's the best natural source of this and the best biochemical form of this? And again, that's never going to happen because there's all kinds of stuff involved, but we can see this and say, okay, good. Again, there is science supporting what we've been saying, and here's hard numbers, and here's what these things do. So, I'm going to test my levels and go after optimal range with it.
This is fantastic study. I mean, I love how they break everything down to what they do. So thank you so much for sharing this.
Yeah.
How does this go in with what Emily was asking last week? We get, for example, with my situation, I get everything up to the levels it needs to be. Are there just certain ones that we should always take? And then if we're in a flare-up situation, bring in some of the ones we were taking? Because I know we also don't want to overdo it. So I just wonder once I myself have gotten to a good balanced spot, what will I do from there with this?
Yeah, great question. So obviously when you're not in a good balanced spot, you're going to be taking higher doses than when you are, right? Because we have so deficiency would be not enough. You want to replete your levels. So replete means get them back to good, right? So if you are deficient in vitamin D and you take the RDA of vitamin D, you will never reach optimal vitamin D. And I would argue you're deficient because you were taking the RDA only, okay? Because the RDA is 400 IUs per day, all right? The research suggests that the average adult needs between 4,000 and 6,000 IUs a day. So taking the RDA, you're never going to get there, and you're actually going to go deficient because your D levels are dynamic. So as you're inflamed or as you're infected or as it's winter, you're going to use more D. So if you're only taking 400, which is 10% of what you should really get per day, and you're being challenged by all these different things, of course you're going to smoke through whatever you have and go deficient. So we have to take you to sufficiency and then optimal. And then once we get there, then we want to dial in for Katie, what is the daily maintenance dose she needs to keep her D at this level, okay? And what is your A is X, so we're good there, and so for D, the likelihood is you're going to need a D supplement in addition to the multivitamin. But once we get sufficient in the A, the C, the E, the zinc, that's a multi, that's one product that you can take if it's quality and giving you therapeutic doses. That's one product you should be able to be fine with. You don't need to have 4 different bottles from that point. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
John, building on Katie's question, is there a definitive list? Like we look at these 5 right now, magnesium is a big thing, phytonutrients, we talk about, I mean, it gets pretty exhaustive and which all to track. And then we hear about superfoods, which can take care of everything. Yeah. It gets confusing.
Yeah. So superfoods don't take care of everything. Superfoods in general are just very good antioxidants. So if you think about like the chlorellas and the spirulinas and the astaxanthins, and you could argue turmeric and different things. So largely the superfoods get that name because they're very powerful antioxidants and or anti-inflammatories, which are 2 similar terms but different. So eating the superfoods, you're not going to keep up your vitamin A's and vitamin D's and the baseline nutrients you need for healthy biochemistry and physiology. So those things are these fat solubles you can see here, your multivitamin and minerals. So your B classes, so B1, 2, so all the B's all the way through 3, 5, 6, 12, 9. Okay. Your minerals, so your zinc, your copper, your molybdenum, your all the way down that list, your electrolytes. So a very good antioxidant is going to, or excuse me, a very good multivitamin is going to cover your bases there. And then looking at things, then you can go individual specific. So, okay, does this person need glutathione? We all need glutathione. We can make it, through precursors like N-acetylcysteine and glycine and glutamine. Brassica family of vegetables, the cabbage, the broccolis, the Brussels sprouts, bok choys, those things are the best source of, sulfur to promote glutathione production from a diet standpoint. So if you're getting good, clean food and you don't have any genetic mutations in glutathione production, maybe you don't need glutathione all the time. You just keep it on board for challenges, right? Same idea to Emily's question last week. Do we always need the turmeric and resveratrol? Not always, but should you have it in your optimal health cabinet for challenges? Sure. So sorry, to answer your question, multivitamin should cover the large most things you need on a daily basis. Magnesium isn't going to be sufficient in the multi. So I've seen numbers up to I think it was 78% of Americans are low in magnesium. So that's one that you might have to take in addition. Vitamin D, you're going to have to take in addition, at least until we figure out what your maintenance dose is. Fish oils are something you're not going to get anywhere else. I mean, diet or anywhere. So fish oil is one that we all need. I'd say those would be the 3 or 4 main. People would ask about a probiotic. You could do that. But once you're at it, say an optimal microbiome, then it becomes shifting more towards making sure you're eating enough fiber to feed them. And then you don't need to necessarily take them all the time. So yeah, those are, multi, fish oil, vitamin D, maybe magnesium are the 4 words. Like those are non-compromisables. We basically have to do those.